Thanks so much. So we are going to record this session so that folks who aren't able to be with us this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, wherever you are, that they have a chance to watch it as well. But I do want to just take a minute to welcome you all and say how excited and thrilled I am to see your faces. I'm Tracy Penny-Light. I'm the president of AAEEBL if we haven't met yet, although I think I know almost all of you in the room personally, so that's really exciting. And also I think a testament to what we do at AAEEBL. We really are all about community and building networks, and really am looking forward to hearing about the work that you're all doing with Eportfolios over the next few days, and just having this opportunity to talk to each other and share. We have lots of sessions through the course of the week that will enable you to connect with folks either in a conversation around the work that they're doing, or in some kind of networking session that we've planned, or in one of these hackathon, create-a-thon, or on conference sessions. So lots of different formats for you to engage in across lots of different time zones. We will try our best to record as many of the sessions as possible so that if you have to leave early, I know we're all working, some of us at work and some of us at home still. If you've got to go to a meeting or jet off to something else, then you'll be able to still access the materials. All of everything you're going to need is going to be found in the conference portal. I should let you know that we have had one cancellation due to illness today. Unfortunately, Eddie Watson from AACNU is unable to offer his assignment design workshop, or conversation. We're hoping that we will wrestle Eddie into running a session that will be available to all of you as AAEEBL members sometime in the fall. So keep posted on it, and we'll keep you posted on that. And again, we'll keep everything updated in the conference portal, and I'll put a link to that in the chat in just a moment. So I won't take any more time. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jordi Getman-Eraso, who's going to lead us through our opening conference session. Welcome, Jordi.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and welcome all of you. I'm really excited to be with you today. It's always daunting to be the first one to offer a session in any conference, but this one especially because it's one that AAEEBL is an organization that I think is very special and that I have always felt very connected to, and I think it's potentially one of the organizations that I've attended most conferences of and presented at. So I'm really happy to be here with you. And today I am going to do something I've never done before, which is to offer a hackathon. In fact, I'm so nervous about it to a certain extent that I'm going to expect that everybody's going to help me out. But then when I read about what a hackathon is actually about, I realized that that's all of us. So we're all going to be participating. We're all going to be actively engaged in discussing and considering and reconsidering the notion of a professional online presence. And it's a very, for me, a very interesting concept, because I've always had some element of an online professional presence, but I've never really thought about it all that much. I've never really stopped to think about what it is that I'm putting out, what I'm presenting to students, to colleagues, and the like. And so at that level, I think today will be, for me, is going to be just as interesting a conversation, I hope, as it is for you to engage in. Maybe for a second, could we, I'm looking at the number of people. I think we have 25, 29, okay. Everybody's been saying hi, but would you like to quickly say hi, give your name? Because I think we're all participants here. I think we should all introduce each other. Just make it quick if you don't mind, and we can go down the line. I guess I can start with, I see Kevin. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, everybody. I teach as a lecturer faculty member at San Francisco State University. I'm on the AAEEBL board. And as Jordi mentioned, my professional online presence has been less than intentional, shall we say. So I'm excited to put some intentionality behind what I'm putting out into the world. Great to see everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. Helen, I see you next on my page.
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Let's see. I guess I'm really intrigued by this idea of a professional online presence. Have been working with my colleagues in career services at Stanford, to kind of develop this further. I'm going to put a link into the chat to a New York Times article that I saw this weekend about TikTok resumes. Fascinating, perhaps related to ePortfolios. Not sure where it might actually go with respect to employment and so on, but certainly gives credence to the idea of alternative ways of representing who you are, communicating what you know through different media. And I think, ePortfolios are certainly one way to do that, and perhaps, again, other kinds of social media as well.
Thank you, Helen. I see Amy Powell.
Yeah, good morning. Well, good morning from here anyways. Amy Powell, I'm at IUPUI. I lead ePortfolio work for the campus. I'm really excited about this session because I have a ePortfolio that is full of like demo showcases that I use all over campus, but I don't actually have a portfolio that is like represents me as a professional. So super excited to kind of dig in, and it's finally time that I actually create something that represents me.
Great, thank you, Amy. Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon from Dublin. I am delighted to be here, new to the AAEEBL board, and was excited to help organise the conference over the last for the next coming days. Working Dublin City University, and I lead the ePortfolio rollout there. So we've lots of examples of assessment portfolios, but few have actually developed their own professional portfolios to date.
Thank you, Lisa. Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie A. Schmeiner at IUPUI, and I could use a lot of help with my personal presence with ePortfolio. I have a ton of class ePortfolios that are even instructional, but I don't have a place that links to them on my personal kind of Vita thing. And then I'd also like my online promo page to maybe be more than just academic.
Thank you. And I believe it's John Turner, right?
Yes. Hi there. I'm John Turner. I'm at High Point University. And I think I can echo Kevin in saying my online presence is a little less intentional. So I'm hoping to shape that up.
Thank you. Ali Davidson?
Hi there. So I'm from Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. And I have not thought about my online presence since before the pandemic. My world changed so much. My work changed so much in just putting out fires and helping instructors keep their heads above water with teaching with ePortfolios and with our learning management system, that I'm really excited to revisit my ePortfolio and think about my online presence again. Professional development, what? This is exciting.
Thank you, Ali. Sonia Taylor.
Good morning. For me, it's morning. I'm hoping that there's coffee for me soon. I feel like there wasn't enough, so I'm hoping it's strong enough when it comes out. I guess I differently feel like I've definitely had a professional online presence for a number of years, and I kind of try to integrate the personal and the professional, and like, I guess, a public one, which is more like a combination of various aspects of what I do. The problem lately for me is when someone asks me what I do, I run a dual credit program at Portland State, and I could give like my elevator speech covers like a third of my job at most. And I don't know, like any of you, I felt like I worked like 2 full-time jobs this last year. But maybe I could offer some insight, as I just did a milestone review this last year and had to put together a portfolio for that. So I've been really doing a lot of portfolio work this last year. And I'm excited to hear other perspectives. And I'm so happy to see everyone. And I can't wait till we can be in person someday.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sonia. And you're so clear with your thoughts. Without coffee, I can't imagine what's going to happen when the coffee arrives. It's going to be really interesting. Thank you. Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Bouchneau. I'm also at IUPUI. And yeah, I haven't thought a lot about my professional presence, but before this session, for fun, I tried to open up my LinkedIn portfolio and I found out it's connected to an email address from Hotmail do you remember Hotmail? So it's been a minute.
There you go. I think that we're all going to have moments like that over the course of the next hour or so. Next one on my screen is, I think I'm reading this correctly, Jeffrey Yan.
Hello, everyone. Jordi, nice to meet you.
Very nice meeting you too, Jeff.
Yes. My name's Jeff Yan. I am one of the co-founders of the education. I think I met Jordi about 15 years ago, but he just keep forgetting about me. I've thought quite a lot about online identities, and especially when it comes to also privacy and some of those sort of ethical aspects of it as well. And actually, in fact, Helen, when you brought up TikTok as a resume, that's actually probably one of my first thinking there is that, oh, we just opened up a whole other layer of information to a government that is quite outlandishly had said that they are going to collect our identity, and that's what they're going to be doing. And so I'm actually rather worried about that particular aspect of it. But anyway, I'd love to learn more from this group on this, and looking forward to it.
Thank you, Jeff. And Gail?
Let me not forget to unmute. Hi, everybody. I'm Gail Ring, and I'm the Director of Service and Learning Partnerships for PebblePad North America. And Jordi, thank you. This was a brilliant idea, having us all introduce each other. It's almost like we're kind of together. We can kind of look for each other as we pass in the virtual hallways. So I love this idea. And I can relate so much to everybody. And I think this helps us relate to our students too, because I don't know of anybody, I think I know 3 people that continue to update their portfolio, right? On a regular basis. Most of us are like, oh, wait, I'm looking for a job, or back in the day, I was one of the founding members of the Art of Practice, which this seems like a perfect offshoot of. And that was another time, oh, it's time to update our portfolio for this conference. So, I think we all are in fits and starts, and that's just the nature. And then when we do finally do it, we're like, oh, wow, I get it. I know why this is so valuable. So I'm really looking forward to this session. So thank you.
Thank you, Gail. I now have Kathy Visavati.
Oh, very good. Very good. You accomplished the first task. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning in Indianapolis. I'm faculty in health science at IUPUI. No ePortfolio, here to start.
Thank you, Kathy. Adrienne?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Jordi, thanks for hosting this event. I am assistant professor at Rutgers University in the School of Health Professions, so a physical therapist by trade, representing our professional programs and really shouldering the load to get our program onto ePortfolio. So it was a hurry up offense in my 8-week January to February course with our graduating students to get them transitioned from a paper professional portfolio to an ePortfolio. So thankfully, with the help of some lovely instructional designers, we were able to make that happen. The challenge now is building assessment for that and then doing the rollout for the rest of the student cohorts, and then trying to articulate the TikTok phenomenon and how to integrate some of those social media artifacts that our students are just brilliant at doing in a professional and really showcasing that in mature language that isn't just, this is some cool stuff that I did with my buddies, but this is the creative innovation that I'm bringing as a professional new hire into the landscape of a very kind of serious healthcare situation. So it's difficult to be able to translate that. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here, and I kind of have to walk the walk and back up my talk with my students. So my ePortfolio needs to get there too. So thanks so much for the time and the introduction.
Thank you. Cindy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Leong, and I am an instructional designer over at the University of Arizona. I just started recently with the College of Pharmacy, and they are working on creating a virtual or e-portfolio for their pharmacy program here. In the past, it's been very paper-based, where they would turn in this gigantic binder of all their resume and their surveys and things like that. And so a few years ago, they started going to email, where they would send an email to our coordinator, and then she would gather everything. But then she was getting 500, 600 some emails in 1 year on just this one task. And so last year, they tasked me with putting our portfolio into our learning management system and seeing how that worked out. And we've had a couple of kinks and things with it, but we're still starting to kind of work things out. So that's why I was interested in this conference, to see how we can maybe use other social medias to build a better e-portfolio for our students that are going forward into the pharmacy world. And personally, I think the only probably professional presence I have online is probably LinkedIn. And it's not, it's just kind of what I do, and here's my tasks and things. I can't really show my work because of the proprietary that I do with a lot of my different projects and things. So I'm interested to see how else we can show our online presence. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Frank, welcome.
Welcome, everyone, from Savannah, Georgia, where we're at 11 o'clock or so. I teach in the College of Business Administration, and I also teach first-year experience to students. I'm pretty much a novice to the ePortfolio part of our learning management system, so I'm really looking forward to learning more on how to both myself and really my students have that over time.
Thank you. Brandy.
Hi, I'm Brandy, another IUPUI. So hello, IUPUI people I haven't seen in person in forever. I am the director of the Life Health Sciences internship program, and we have our interns do an ePortfolio and create their LinkedIn account. So I have both, just so I'm not a hypocrite, but while I do a quick check every year and update some minor things, I haven't really taken a step back and looked at either one holistically and made some major updates. So I would like to do that.
Thank you. Nora, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nora McCook. I teach in Bloomfield College in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and we are about a year into an ePortfolio pilot. And I started an ePortfolio on the Google Sites platform that I set up for the students, and I really had them and doing it as a model and stuff in mind, not so much a sort of professional audience of colleagues. I've got a LinkedIn, ResearchGate, I think, profiles. But yeah, I really haven't thought about those, especially as they're all out there at the moment. So I'm looking forward to learning more.
Thank you. And then, of course, Candice with two of the most beautiful cats we've ever seen.
Hi there. What are we doing? We're introducing ourselves?
Yes, yes. We're starting a hackathon, and we want to know where everybody's coming from. Just a very quick intro on who you are and maybe your connection to your online presence, your professional online presence.
Okay. Yeah, Candice Reynolds from Portland State University, and I've made 53 ePortfolios. I have one that I'm pretty proud of that's active and out there that is directed towards my students. Don't really have one that's more of a professional ePortfolio though. So I'm interested in learning more.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see, Jordan.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm a program assistant at the University of Puget Sound, where I support the implementation of ePortfolio in hi Amy, in various courses. And one of the projects that I've been heading up here is trying to get students to use ePortfolio for professional endeavors and portfolios that face people outside of our institution. And I have a professional ePortfolio that I really only develop right before I do a training each time. So I'm excited to work on my own and bring back what I can for my peers.
Thank you. Nixon, hello.
Yes, good morning to all of you. My name is Nixon Cleofat. I am an associate professor at Bloomfield College, the coordinator of first year seminar. I am actually working with my colleague, Dr. Norma Cook. She is the brain of ePortfolio. This is actually our first time implementing ePortfolio. Last fall, we actually had a pilot program of ePortfolio. So what we did, we actually piloted the ePortfolio program through our first year curriculum. So most of our first year courses or courses that are designated for first year STEM, we actually use ePortfolio as a way to help our students professionalize their assignments beyond the classroom. And we are very excited. We will also be participating on a panel tomorrow, and I definitely look forward to this.
Thank you so much, Nixon. Ryan.
Hello from Southwestern Idaho. I'm Ryan Witt. I'm director of the Writing Center and First Year Seminar at the College of Idaho in lovely Caldwell, Idaho. We're starting a new ePortfolio initiative, and as First Year Seminar director, it's important to get folks onboarded in First Year Seminar, students and faculty, get them all going on it. And so part of my presence here is to continue to develop my own ePortfolio so I can show folks and speak with a little bit of experience as to how this whole process works. So it's nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. Mark.
Mark doesn't have a microphone, but he did put his in the chat. And he said he's the chair of the Department of Kinesiology, and with a few colleagues there, they're on a year 4 of a department-wide ePortfolio project from freshman year through to senior year. They view it as a process to start and product to end. And his own presence on ePortfolios or other electronic mediums is greatly underthought.
Wow, that's a very well-prepared statement. Thank you so much, Mark. Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. It is Maureen here, Pender Island, Canada. So I am, well, first of all, I'm a teaching and learning with technology strategist in a post-secondary context. My history is as an educator in post-secondary, but I'm currently engaged in research in K-12 context. So when I think of my own identity and my own professional portfolio, which is always very fluid, I think about learning being lifelong and not only a high impact practice in higher education, but the potential to scaffold our experiences lifelong as we're whole humans. So it's very cool because I do support faculty in seeing how we can allow students to demonstrate their learning in various ways, especially with the integration of these platforms. I mean, probably many of us in here started off on platforms that no longer exist, and TikTok is here today but won't be tomorrow. And so I think it's the practice of reflection, and I'm just excited to see how people are doing these things in their own contexts as complex humans. So good morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And sorry for a second, I have to swing over to the other page. Mary Allen, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning. I'm from Hartwick College in upstate New York. I'm a member of the team that's part of the AACNU ePortfolio Institute. I'm an ePortfolio neophyte and a first timer to AAEEBL. So I am eager to learn as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Kathy Berlin.
Hey, everybody. I am Kathy Berlin. I am also from IUPUI in Indianapolis. It's great to see so many of our colleagues from the university here, which I think is a testimony to the university's support of ePortfolios. I have an ePortfolio, but as Gail said, I don't update it. So I'm looking forward to hearing how to make it more creative and interesting.
Thank you so much. Chloe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chloe Jones. I work with Ali Davidson at Carleton University, but I am new to ePortfolios, so I'm excited to learn more. And I have not really thought about my professional profile in a while, so I'm excited to learn more.
Thank you. And let's see, Emily.
Good morning. I'm Emily. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah with Salt Lake Community College, and I'm over the ePortfolio program here. And as far as professional presence goes, I do have a portfolio. We've been semi-implementing it as part of an annual review process. So about annually, I update it. I should be better. So I'd love to learn more about how to be more effective with that.
Thank you so much. Let's see, Richard. We're getting close to the end. Richard.
Hey, Rich Foreman, Albany State University in Albany, Georgia. I'm a biology professor who's been poking the beast for a couple of years, trying to get ePortfolio stuff going here, and looks like we're finally doing it. So we'll have a pilot starting in January. I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in my own personal professional ePortfolio, but I'm really keen on student learning ePortfolios. But Tracy made it sound like I should come to this, so I'm here.
Great. Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I'm also an IUPUI person, the assistant director in our writing program, and I teach professional and online writing. So my students are producing a lot of material that should go into an ePortfolio. So I'm really interested in that. As far as my own online presence, I got my first webmaster job in 1996. So there is a lot of stuff out there. And I feel like, you know, it's constantly changing. The online context is just, you know, in flux all the time. So I always wonder how many little remnants of my presence are out there that I've completely forgotten about. Somebody mentioned MySpace. I know there's a MySpace somewhere that I still have and have not checked in 25 years.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the new one is called MyFace. Margaret?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Margaret Cox. I teach English at Savannah State University, and I'm interested in learning more about ePortfolios. This looks like a good place to start. Let's see how it goes.
Thanks, Margaret. It is the best place to start, I can tell you that. ABLE is the best place. Charlotte?
I think Charlotte has just got on, so she may not know what we're doing.
Oh.
Exactly. I'm trying to figure it out. Sorry.
Yeah, just introduce yourself and what is it that brings you to the hackathon today?
I'm Charlotte Padilla, and I'm from the University of Arizona. And we just started with ePortfolios, and I don't know a lot about it, but I'd like to teach it to my students. So I'm just here as an observer and to learn. Am I in the correct spot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. And I think, am I correct in getting the last person here, Ryan?
No, you actually already got me.
Oh, that's right. Okay. That's right. See, I've been doing such a good job of getting people to turn on their cameras, and then when you turn them back off, that you like run back over to the back end of the other screen for some reason. So my apologies, but thank you, Ryan. All right, so how do we get this going? Like I said at the very beginning, a hackathon is something that I'd heard about hackathons, especially in the area of computer software. And I was wondering to thinking about how we could do a hackathon talking about online, our professional online presence. And by the way, that's a whole other like sort of big, complicated concept to me, at least, that I wanted to think about it a little bit, but I also wanted to open it up to you. If I can, I think I'm going to share a screen. I just want to show you. Speaking of technology, I have a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation that I will go through very quickly so that we can get back to talking. But I wanted to throw out some notions that I've run across in thinking about my professional online presence. And then I want us to then engage in actually discussing with each other, now that we know each other a little better, what it is that we want to bring to the table when we're talking about our online presence, how we want to envision it as purely, in a more traditional sense, professional in the sense of what the business community does versus what educators do. We tend to be, I think, influenced, and maybe sometimes in a good way, but sometimes maybe not so positively, by the business community, especially when it comes to this notion of a professional online presence. So I want to throw out some concepts, and if you don't mind me sharing, I think I can do it. Yes, it looks like I can. Let me do this. Oh, I'll get back to this in a second. Okay, can everybody see what I'm showing? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
You know how Zoom works. Now I'm halfway disconnected from you. So as I was mentioning, when a moment ago, let me see if I can get the button that moves this. Okay. This is the schedule for today's hackathon, but I'm kind of going to throw this out because I know that you guys are going to take over, and I won't be able to impose any type of order because you're going to be so creative that a schedule that is this tight might not work. But what my initial intention was to talk a little bit about the concept of a professional online presence, then get some feedback from you using Jamboard, which is one of the new and very interesting technologies that I have run across in the last year because of COVID. And then we're going to go and do some breakout sessions where in smaller groups, I want us to work towards, you've introduced yourself. Now I want us to then think more deeply about what it is that we understand to be elemental in designing our online presence. And in so doing, I'm not going to ask you to bring to the table what you already know. We want to be, it is a hackathon. We want to be creative in the way that we come up with new visions of what an online presence could be like. And so at that level, I want us to look at not just the professional from the academic standpoint or the scholarly standpoint, but also because we are an ePortfolio organization and we're a bigger ePortfolio family, we tend to think a lot about teaching and learning as well. And so I'm going to ask you to think about how that can be part of your professional online presence, and consider the positives and sort of the, at the same time, obstacles that it might present, to try to bring in a holistic view of ourselves. Then we'll come back and report quickly and get some reactions, feedback. And then if we have time, I actually want us to take out a piece of paper and envision what our online presence image would look like. So if we have time, we'd love to do that. Okay, so let me continue here. What is a hackathon? I'm not going to spend time on this. Most of you probably know what a hackathon is, maybe looked it up before this session. Computer programmers get together short periods of time to try to overcome or develop new software programs or overcome issues with software. But what we're doing here today, I think, is much more interesting in a sense, not that I don't think software is interesting, but interesting in the context of education and our professional passions is that, you know, there are and have been alternative hackathons, and this is one of them. Some of them deal with issues in industry, government, and then what we're doing here today is brainstorming really for innovation and motivation within the context of us being professionals in the academic world. And yet, as most of us have admitted, we either don't have a fleshed out online presence, or we've had one for so long that we sometimes don't remember what it looks like. And when we go back to it, we find that we have maybe should have updated stuff some years ago. So, and also it's not just about updating. What is it that, how is it that we really understand ourselves and how we present ourselves online? We're so busy we're so busy in our work that I think it's sometimes we just don't have the time to stop and say, who am I, and how am I presenting myself to the different audiences that I am engaging through my work. So this is something that, to me, I started thinking about the professional online presence, and I started to sort of simplify how I was breaking it down in my mind. Why would I want a professional online presence? And to me, the main concepts that really kind of pop up are the notion that you can actually share an academic passion. And when I say share an academic passion, I mean both with colleagues and members of disciplinary communities, but also my students. And this is something that I've had an ePortfolio since back in 2008, when Jeff Yan first convinced me that it was the best thing since sliced bread. And it turned out to be that way. And so I too have, I don't know how many ePortfolios floating around, but there's always been this passion behind them. Another way to use your online presence is to share ideas and research with your colleagues, right? We've all done that. And I remember the days when I would send emails with information, and then emails gave way to sharing files directly through other services. And now we might actually have a lot of what we want to share on one of our social platforms, or some of the different software platforms that allow you to engage in creating this professional online presence. You can also, as we've seen, we can create and join and build academic communities through the creation of our presence and the engagement with others like us. For me, this last one, modeling for my students, has become a very important element of what I think of myself as a presence online, a digital identity. And mainly because I found that I had been teaching for years without actually having, I had a professional ePortfolio that was geared more towards getting reappointed and then eventually getting promoted in my work. And even though that's the biggest responsibility that I have is teaching, I didn't really incorporate my students or what they might want to know about me into my online presence. So I ended up then having two ePortfolios that I really considered my main ePortfolios. And so it brought me to a question of doubting whether I could maintain that separation between the more scholarly oriented ePortfolio or scholarly oriented online presence and the one that I was presenting to my students. And you might think initially, well, is that really a professional online presence? Well, I would argue that it is a very important online presence, that our students be able to look at us, not just as those who are responsible for giving them grades or responsible for their academic success and maybe in their mind, but also those of us who are actually modeling for them or trying to show them where they might want to go in the future. Not you know, I teach history. Most of my students will never be historians, but I do think that in presenting myself to them as a person who is a professional and yet also their teacher. There's so many roles that I am representing to them, that it's important, I think, to be able to sit down and think through how I want them to look at me, so that we can have the beginning of a conversation through me presenting myself to them. Because ultimately, as a big ePortfolio practitioner, I want them to then present themselves to me in the way that they decide is most most useful. Then I have a little separate section here, things that have already popped up in our initial conversation, but something that I want us to think about when we go through this process of thinking about our online presences. Googling, you know, like if you start Googling yourself or get on some other, I mean, actually, you should probably do it on all different search engines, because they all have slightly different ways of interpreting what they're looking for in your background, in your presence online. And so to me, one of the things that I first did 2 or 3 years ago when I was putting together an ePortfolio to go up for promotion at my institution, I thought, well, let me go on Google and see what's out there. And there's tons of stuff, because I've created a lot of content. But it's also very interesting to start thinking about how it is that Google or Yahoo or Bing, I guess, are evaluating what is important about me or not when they're presenting it online. And also another thing that a colleague of mine said to me a couple of years ago when they saw my ePortfolio, said, I guess you're really trying to sell yourself here. You know, it's just, I think that I came to the realization at that point, or I was reminded at least, of the notion that as academics, we tend to not want to look at ourselves as someone might be in the business industry. You know, like where you're constantly trying to have a way of showcasing what it is that's really special about you, and what it is that allows you to get promoted within your company, or then move on to another company and get a different job at higher pay, hopefully. So this notion of marketing, are we marketing ourselves? Are we not marketing ourselves? What does it make you feel sick to hear the word marketing? Does it make you feel curious? I wanted to throw that out there. And then also another colleague of mine, one that I actually went to graduate school with over 20 years ago. He recently started talking to me about branding, how he's branding himself. And this is something that's really kind of crept into academia. And I think, you know, you can look at it, as I mentioned, just like with marketing. It can be a negative notion, but it can also be an opening to thinking about how it is that, you know, what is it about branding in business that might be useful to us in academia. Can we have an academic brand? It's funny because my colleague does a pretty good job of selling the fact that he needs a brand, but he hasn't shown me his brand yet. So I'm a little, maybe he's just like me. He has the idea, and then by the time you try to implement it, you just run out of time. Anyway, so what kind of types of online presence? These have already come up. You know, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, once again, comes out of business, but it's actually something that we as academics have. You know, I finally gave in a few years ago and got a LinkedIn account. I'm afraid to say, oh, and Kevin's actually on the little chat here, but from like 2 years ago. I'm afraid to say I don't keep up with LinkedIn very much because I actually do not like it. Aesthetically speaking, it drives me nuts. So, which is another thing I want to talk to you about. You know, we've got Academia and EDU, where I posted stuff and articles of mine, and it's nice to share them that way. And I get every day I get an email with an article I might be interested in. It's great, but when I look at, and by the way, I've never paid for any of these services, so I have the simplest version possible. So maybe I'm not seeing some of the really beautiful stuff behind the curtain, but I kind of doubt that I'm missing out on too much. ePortfolios, websites, you could say too, another type of online presence. And this is a little bit of what I was talking about earlier. I mean, you can nowadays there are many providers of website platforms that can actually help you create in HTML5. You can create easily websites. You can drag and drop stuff. But then there's also ePortfolios, and we have representatives from different ePortfolio platforms with us today, which is great. But ePortfolios, in my mind, always aspire to go further than a website. They aspire to allow you to integrate and align the aesthetic elements that you see. For example, here, this is the ePortfolio, the landing page that I have for my students. And at the same time, it allows you to engage in more high impact practice teaching and learning with your students, or maybe even with other faculty. So the question then becomes, let's go a little further, right? This also has come up so far. What types of online presence, to tweet or not to tweet? This is an ongoing question with my colleagues. Do you tweet? Do you tweet? Yes. There's, some of us still have Facebook. That seems to be not quite the way of MySpace, but it's an interesting for my students. The younger generations are not looking at to Facebook anymore in the same way. But Instagram, on the other hand, is quite important and relevant. And TikTok, come on, here it is. Both, I mean, I was surprised that recently at a teaching and learning conference in the Bronx, one of my colleagues started talking about using TikTok to create videos that were short, but actually hit on all the important topics or concepts that she was trying to teach that week. And that it was actually getting great responses from students. So it's really interesting to me to look at all of these platforms and think about, the same thing happened with Twitter some years ago. I remember some English professors talking about when I first learned about the potential use of Twitter as an educational tool. Having students write a tweet, and the interesting element to them was that it was, I think at that time, it was only 125 characters. And you had to think very carefully about what words to type to get your idea across. So all of these platforms are social platforms, right? Social media platforms, but they have found their way into education. So my question then becomes, we as educators, do we, as part of our online presence, do we engage in using these platforms? So, and I'm almost done here. So I have a quick question, and let's see if I can, has anybody used Jamboard before? Hopefully you have. Okay, let's see if this works. I am putting a link into the chat. I am going to step away from sharing the screen. I think I can do that over here. Yes. And if you go to that link, you should come across a Jamboard page that looks like a white piece of paper, and it says, what is your professional online presence? Did people see that? Okay, if you have not used Jamboard, and let me share very quickly again so you can see. I'm just going to do this one more second so you can see what you can do. In looking at the white piece of paper, does everybody have on the side? You should all have the editing commands on the left, right over here. If you do not, somebody yell out, so because that's the way it should be working. What you can do, with here is you can write directly onto this white piece of paper. You can also take for example, a sticky note. If you click on sticky note, you'll have a pop-up, and I can put in a word or more, and I can click save, and then it goes onto the Jamboard. So why don't we take a second here, and I want you to write up there what your professional online presence is. I know some of you mentioned it already. List out, if you want, platforms you're using, or at the same time, you can also write something more contextual or conceptual. And if you want to write, perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. So as people are writing on there, we should start to see it fill up. By the way, this is a great tool I have found personally. I mean, this is just my personal take on it. Jamboard is it's free, and you can use it in a simple. I mean, there's a more expensive version, but you can use this with your students in especially when you're Zooming with them these days, to have them answer or engage in quick commentary that then can be shared. The whole class can then discuss in more detail. Great. We've got LinkedIn. Mahara. It's great. LinkedIn, Facebook, academia.edu, philosophy and highlights, Twitter, Pathbright portfolio. Wow. That's impressive. Squarespace, YouTube channel. Okay, I didn't bring that up, but thank you. That's a great one. Facebook, Instagram, meeting minutes that are public. I love it. This is great. Okay. Pebble pad, nice and big. All right, so here, what I'm starting to see here. Oh, nice. I love curated. The word curated has popped up. This is something we've all been referencing in the initial minutes. Okay, so we're more or less, I think some of them are still coming in. So in thinking about your presence, I want to go back. I'm glad. Thank you for contributing. There's a couple more Jamboard questions that we'll do in a second. But before we do, I want to go back quickly to sharing, and I have to propose a couple of concepts that I think are really important, to me at least. And then after that, we will break up into little groups. Oh, actually, sorry. I wanted to do one more Jamboard. If you go to the next Jamboard, if you can still go back to that page, you go to the next one, positives and negatives of professional online presence. Does everybody see that? I will share my screen. It's the next one. So if you were here, this was the first page. At the very top, there's a next frame. There's a little button you can click. It takes you to the next page. Positives and negatives. So please post on there and then put on each side that what you think is positive or negative. It can be just one. Positives. Connection, engagement, reflection. I can put what I can control what I put out there. Another positives, ways to connect with others. Website links pages are great for conference presentations, highly portable. I agree with that. Model good practices for students. Negatives, let's look at some of these. Finding time to curate. Time to update, very similar. Time to update and create. So there's definitely a trend there. Time it takes to update, POP, data privacy, proprietary information. Things quickly get outdated and you forget passwords. That's right. Landmines of privacy. Fragmentation, lots of variability in what these sites capture. That's a really interesting one too, I think. I love how everybody's trying to be organized and putting these up here and moving them around. Co-creation of ideas through interaction with others. That's a very good positive. Staying in touch with people you're no longer in a real space with. Great. Build connections and network. That's also positive. More personalized than a resume. Can share who I am as a person. Do I have to have one? Was that Kevin? Or was that Jeff? Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing and give us a chance. I think give us a chance to think one step further. And this is where I want to propose to you that when you're thinking about the word professional online presence, as I mentioned earlier, how about if we try to throw in there the notion of who we are as educators, as the students would best benefit from. In other words, not just talk about how we teach or what our pedagogical proclivities are, but rather throw together and curate a presence that actually incorporates students, their world, their objectives, their desire to succeed in your class, in your program, at your university. So let me propose quickly one more sharing of the screen, and then I will be done sharing, I promise. Okay, so some of you who have attended AAEEBL conferences before have seen this discussed. We live in a world where online participative culture is an integral element of our social engagement. We talked about Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok. These are all platforms and technologies that are the reason I would argue that they have become usable in the educational world, in teaching and learning, is that they are relatively intuitive, so low barriers of entry. Twitter, I actually still get stuck on. I don't like the aesthetics or the I don't find it intuitive, but you know, I'm just an outlier there. Strong support for sharing one's contributions. You know, there's this informal mentorship where differently to how we operate, or traditionally the educational world has operated, you don't have clearly defined social structures where the faculty member stands out as a guide or a gatekeeper of knowledge in some cases, that you could say, also a guide for the student at the very least, or a mentor. Online platforms, social media platforms, the mentorship can vary depending on the moment of the day that you're on this platform. You can engage very positively and gain a lot of positive information and encouragement from people you don't know at all, but who may be younger than you and might have less of an education, but they know the platform better. These elements of connection, a sense of ownership over what you've created, a collective sense that gets created around a certain concept, notion, following of a certain movie star or a sports team, can actually lead to these informal communities that have developed a really strong sense of what the world around them, as they've defined it, maybe even largely on an online platform, is all about. I mean, I think that if we look at the last year, the political spectrum in the United States, well, let's go the last 4 or 5 years. Trump was able to use Twitter in a very effective manner, and it wasn't just him, but so many people took to online platforms to express their political views. So you go from something that is social, at least in concept initially, to something that becomes very, very political and very powerfully political I would argue, to the point that it is in many, as we know from the last couple of elections, more people are getting their information from social media platforms than from TV news, maybe even in some cases the internet. So for me, what's really, I've presented this before at when I try to talk to faculty about engaging students and not being afraid of using that which is personal with students to bring them into the academic domain, because that which is personal to students, their personal experiences and what they've learned is in some dimension a metacognitive process that can be useful to having them engage and learn to develop similar thinking processes in the academic domain. This is something very important to someone like me, who I work at a community college in the Bronx. Our students might not come from the best academic backgrounds, but their personal backgrounds are rich, very diverse, and in being able to dig into that, we're able, somebody mentioned the first year programs earlier. This is one of the key approaches to our first year program, is to have students take all the strength that is personal and use it to help them jump into the academic domain more comfortably so that they can be successful. So my question then to you is, how can we use participative culture as a type of hybrid pedagogy? It's not just about having students engage, bring their personal experiences into their learning at the university level, but rather also thinking about us as teachers, as mentors, trying to help students learn. We ourselves need to embrace, or at least engage or absorb, some of the elements that would make us better integrate participative culture into our teaching and learning. So my question then is, if that would be some, and there's some version of this that I'm sure that you've engaged with at your colleges, but the question is, why do I talk about this? Well, we've found in our own research that both with students and with faculty, developing an online presence is a mode of empowerment. It is, and when we talk about Eportfolios, we've heard a lot of these different concepts here. The development of a sense of ownership, and the development of a sense of authorship, of pride, of a sense of community and connection. Eportfolios allow for that to happen in a manner, if curated properly and if presented properly to students, and integrated and aligned properly with high impact practices in your courses, you can have students develop a sense of engagement and empowerment that is similar, we find, to that which they feel through social media engagement. Now, I know we can have a long conversation about how dangerous that could be, to allow social media to become dominant within the academic and the educational world. But I think that we have to consider the possibilities, and I think that we have to consider how it might benefit us, not just as teachers, but also as professionals in the academic world. Can we continue to consider our online presence some version online of a traditional resume, a paper resume, a paper CV? I myself am still required to present paper documentation when I go up for promotion or when I am reappointed in my position. And it seems rather frustrating to me that we are engaging in these incredibly progressive and creative pedagogical approaches, and yet when we deal with our own discipline, our own administrative structure that is designed to support us, at least in theory, they require of us paper. not that I have anything against the paper. I actually like paper a lot, and I like taking notes on paper because I tend to remember things better. So do actually, as it turns out, students. But why do I have to use that to present myself in this sort of black and white typewritten format? Why can I not do this, which is to, and by the way, this is 4 years old. So, and I have not curated this since. So, you know, it's mea culpa here, but why not create an e-portfolio? And some institutions are doing this, which I'm really proud to see happen. My own institution is slowly now asking me to guide them on how we could do this for our faculty as an option, to be able to highlight what it is that they do as a professor. In the same way that students can demonstrate the multidimensionality of their thinking and their learning. Well, this is actually kind of boring because it's just publications, but what you're seeing here is my attempt when I went up for promotion to have a way of, as I was discussing what it was that I was going to, how I saw myself contributing to the future of my college, that I would be able to have this behind me on a screen instead of a piece of paper in front of the evaluating committee that I was addressing when I did so. Of course, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I want us to see each other. Of course, when I went to present my my e-portfolio that I had worked a couple of weeks on, I had coordinated ahead of time to make sure that the conference room had all of the technology that was necessary to project this on the wall. They assured me that it did. And then I showed up the day of, and they told me that the computer was down and that I couldn't access the internet. And there I was in an old conference room. It indeed had a projector on the wall, but I couldn't project it at all. So then I had to actually take that whole e-portfolio and turn it into a conversation without them being able to look at it. One of the most frustrating moments of my life, but at the same time, it's so interesting that and we've talked about this with e-portfolios over the years, the curation of that e-portfolio over the prior 2 weeks, the careful decision of where I was going to place one bit or another bit, or the images and so forth, had ensured that when I actually stood up in front of that committee, I became more animated, and I was very clear on what I wanted to say. So that process in and of itself of curating my online presence was critical to me being able to feel confident about what I was presenting, but also to align it in such a way that it was one step led to the other, so that there was an integration and definitely an alignment of my teaching and my scholarship, my community service, as you saw there, which is actually something that my school looks at, and also my scholarly work, college service. But anyway, so I am going to stop right there. I want to see if anybody has any thoughts on their online presence or any reactions to the notion that, or the question that I'm kind of posing, of to what extent can we integrate everything we do as academics in an online presence? And in asking that, I'm also asking you, to what extent can we integrate everything we do in our notion of ourselves professionally? I hope that makes sense. And yes, I will share the URL to the portfolio, definitely. Let me get that. But please, I would like to open it up. I know I talk too much. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I have one thought that comes to mind, and that's especially in like a education platform or in a similar space, right? Especially students, but also all of us here have an opportunity to explain certain artifacts and the value of certain artifacts that we bring into that space and present to our audience. And I think so long as that explanation is there and concise enough for someone to actually want to read, we can incorporate just about anything. There's still the issue of incorporating sort of social media accounts like Twitter and Facebook into that space. And I suppose our explanations have to exist there. And there also has to be an idea of, you know, our personal life and our work life intersecting and what is appropriate for either one. But yeah, that reflective component, I think, here explains a lot of how we can integrate a lot of things into our professional presence.
Thank you. And I hope, you know, Jordan and I have a connection because our names are similar, but I really appreciate you coming forward like that and proposing that way of thinking about it. And please don't be afraid to disagree with me completely. So
I was just gonna, sorry, Jordi, I was just gonna say that really the last, 18 months has started to blend that presence organically, where suddenly we have furry colleagues and 2-year-old colleagues and all of these things which have humanized people in our professional circles. And I think it is increasingly becoming blended, but it's also allowed us to draw some really hard lines and understand where it might bleed into our personal lives and where we no longer want that encroachment on that space. So I think it's interesting because we've become more whole, I think, although we've been more apart in many ways. So it adds some complexity to it. That's what I was thinking.
yeah, I appreciate that, Lisa. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nixon.
No, I definitely agree with Lisa, especially with teaching remotely. I find Zoom, for example, we don't think of Zoom, or we didn't talk about it as an online platform. The only thing, it's probably more instantaneous than Facebook and other things. So it's giving people access not only to our scholarship, our teaching, but to our own private homes. People we would not invite to come into our bedroom. Some of us have turned our bedrooms into offices. So it's just this personal, how do you present yourself, even dealing with your students, and you also get to see where they sleep or where they don't sleep or where they don't turn the cameras on, and you have to be on. So for me, as I'm teaching during COVID, it's this vulnerable position I find myself, because sometimes I don't know who's listening to me. I don't know who's looking at me while I cannot see them, because most of my students often have their cameras off. I don't know if anyone else, but I just think that Zoom is one of those, I guess, professional space or.
That's it, and there you go again, Nixon. Here we are with something that is business oriented to begin with, right? But which has been quickly adapted to educational purposes because of the realities of COVID. So I think you bring up a really important concept. I mean, my students in the Bronx, rarely do they have a space that is big enough or private enough to really feel comfortable, and so a lot of them do keep their cameras off. Mary, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think part of it too, it raises an interesting point about recorded Zoom sessions, which now become part of your digital presence in some sense. So your actions, your appearance, all those kinds of things, if those videos become publicly sort of available, for example, as YouTube lectures, of classroom discussions, those kinds of things. So it's, I think, I really like your idea of in embedding sort of our own digital presence into our teaching and our pedagogy into our digital presence, in part because it helps maybe us think more about how students are having to think about curating their digital presence and modeling for them professional ways of curating that presence. So I sort of like, I recognize that they have one. I've been really bad at curating my own. Therefore, I haven't really sort of grappled with the struggles that they're having. So by having to do it myself and embed it into my pedagogy, I'll be a better instructor and help them maybe figure out how to use what I offer in my classroom as a tool for them into the future.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Charlotte, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking more about I've been teaching online for several years now, and I couldn't figure out the connect or the disconnect with students. And then I finally got it when I tried to do a Zoom yoga class. And I went, this is it. And the whole idea is that when you walk into a room physically, your presence, you can feel that room. You can feel the energies and the people. And you get that. You lose that online. You lose that whole physical presence of what the room feels like. And that was like when I was doing a yoga class, I didn't feel the people. I didn't feel the movement. So I think that's a disconnect that I don't know how we could ever get back, but that's my 2 cents.
Right, and actually, I think, Charlotte, you said, how can we get it back? And so it's interesting, right? Because I think we always, it's difficult to erase something completely from our experience, and especially in the context of what has happened over the last couple of years. So I think it's going to be fascinating to me to see where we end up going. Jeff?
I was going to say that there is I think that it's hard to come up with a generic formula for digital presence for all students in all fields, because I think that at least in the digital landscape that we have today, all different fields really do different things. So I know many of my artists and graphic design friends, they would have their own personal websites, which is like a portfolio, but where they actually get found is on Dribbble or on Behance and in places where the audience are gathering. So similarly, for some disciplines, LinkedIn is a place where a potential employer is looking for in a professional setting. And when I talk to a student, when they talk about their digital presence, they include Tinder, they include other things that is part of their lives. And I think that it's too difficult, or it wouldn't be sensitive of us to think that there is a generic thing that just because we academics and we want you to have this academic professional and with some like nice mix of like personal stuff into a nicely packaged thing for our students. They feel really differently sometimes, and I think that we need to be a little bit smarter in how we bridge that gap.
That's a really good point. And in fact, it's I think the direction I'm not going to tell you what to talk about, but we'd like to have you break up into groups now and throw around some of these concepts. The idea is not to have everybody agree on a specific way of presenting yourself. I completely agree with you, Jeff. The idea would hopefully be that you can have a sharing of the complexities and difficulties of how it is that, because at the end of the day, we're also people. Each one of us has a different way of feeling where that personal starts and where the academic or the professional ends, or if it does, right? Some of us, I have colleagues, I myself find it easier to open up to my students about some of my personal interests, and it brings them closer to me in the sense that they feel more connected to. So when I teach and when they collaborate in that learning environment with me, we can get things done together that I don't think they would if I had a different personality. But that's me, that's my personality, and I'm comfortable with it. So other people do a much better job of structuring for their students a different interaction, and that also works. So if nobody has any questions, what we'd like to do, I think, Helen, we have 33 people in the room right now. I don't know what you would, I don't want to impose either the number for each group, but we could, I think we should do maybe 3 or 4 groups tops. What do you think? Anybody?
3 or 4 per room, or just four groups?
Well, I was thinking initially about 4 groups, but maybe we want to have it be a little smaller groups so that we can have everybody participate more actively.
Okay.
So say like 5 people per group.
Okay. Let me actually recreate this then.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize for changing it.
No, not at all.
So the question, I'm going to pose a question, but I think that you should, in your group, should address whatever you think is most important about what you're trying to hack here, which is your online presence. And I think that the question initially is really, what are the most critical elements of an online presence that you, after having so far today, after having introduced yourself and seen some of the concepts that I've brought up and what's been going on in the chat, some really great comments there. Where do you go now with your notion of an online presence? What is it that you want it to, what will it fulfill for you, and how will it be received within your work? And beyond that, to Jeff's point, what type of platform or interface do you envision using? Will you continue using a whole bunch? Will you be able to bring some of it together into, or most of it together into one? Could it be an ePortfolio? Could it be another platform? So we're going to give you, in the interest of time, I don't know. I'm not an expert at this, Helen. So you tell me, 10 or 15 minutes? More? Less?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and go with like about 10 minutes, and then we can see.
Yeah, then we can come back and talk. So each group, please, one of you take a few notes, because we would like you to report back when you get back from your discussion. Okay, let's see. I think we have, is everybody back? It looks like it. Good. Well, welcome back. Hopefully your meeting was, your breakout rooms were productive. And actually now the one thing at a practical level, Helen, that I don't remember is who was in each room. So can we we'd like to have you report back on your findings. Maybe we could have one person from each room tell us what you discussed or what you talked about. And I don't know should we go like room 1 maybe? And do you guys remember what room you were in?
I was in room 1 with Lisa and Jordan and Nora and Richard. Yes. And Jordan took great notes, but then he asked me to talk about something. So I guess I won't condense, because we probably have a lot of stuff to talk about. But when he asked me to talk about, we discussed a little bit like career trajectory, and how like where you're at in your career could influence how much personal or what your comfort level with what you're doing in your digital space. So I think that's an important piece that we talked about. And then also, I think it grows over time, like you decide to use different aspects of the digital tools at your disposal. And so we mentioned in the large group before about how everyone has their own comfort level and their personal relationship with their digital spaces. And that, I think, comes from like trying on the different platforms and seeing what works. And anyone in my group want to add something else, please?
Cool. Yes, great. Okay, how about room 2? Who is the speaker for room 2?
We don't think we decided on one. I wrote down some things, so I'll sort of I can summarize the main points, but everybody else should pitch in if I forgot to jot something down. Something we talked about, I mean, actually, Amy asked a really good question, I think, which sort of started our conversation about who defines what's professional in your digital presence. I mean, what does professional really mean? We know that perceptions of that have changed a lot, even in the last 10 to 15 years. And so who decides? Some of the thoughts were, to some extent, you decide a little bit, and sort of making sure that there's both consistency and conscious choices in the ways in which you present yourself online in your digital presence is a good way. Also, the idea that employers will determine what's professional. So how do we sort of help our students identify what that means? And that the platforms that students use are not necessarily platforms we have any interest in learning ourselves. There's just so many. So how do you sort of pick a platform and sort of make that your consistent and conscious choice and maintain your presence there? And finally, really that any kind of digital presence offers an opportunity for students to reflect, to learn reflection skills, and to learn how to build those skills, and then to draw in from those different platforms, maybe into their ePortfolio. So encouraging them to look to all their platforms for potential for reflection in their actual ePortfolio. So if I miss anything, room 2, please jump in.
Mary, I thought that was great. I just wanted to add one thing because I know that there's a couple of folks here from different ePortfolio platforms. I think one really interesting idea, at least it was interesting to me, Candace had described, how students how she was saying, here are my notes, like TikTok is a reflection of their students' world and life, and it's as much a story for them as an audience. And this idea that students could, and Mary talked about this, that they could investigate these different pieces that they've posted through these different medias. And it really made me think of, could a platform like be an aggregate? Because so now we've got to go out to all these different places we've posted and find this stuff, just like there's a parallel in academia. I have to go find all these papers I wrote. I have to go find all these pieces of work I did. But if my reflective writing is out on all these different social media platforms, is there a way to easily aggregate that into my ePortfolio? So now I can go through and I can curate, spend my attention on, curating and seeing the bigger picture and reflecting on that. And that's, I don't know if there's a seed of an idea there and there's a technical solution there, but I thought it was an interesting idea of how the portfolio then can be an aggregate of that.
I could actually jump in and tell you a little bit about some technical limits that people actually deliberately placed on these platforms. So if you are looking at Facebook, Instagram, and actually a number of them, these are businesses. So by all means, let's not forget that part of it. And the way that they make money is that they get you to go onto their platform and you stay there, and then you read ads or you click on ads. That's how they live. That's how they make their paychecks. And so little by little, usually when you have a new platform, they are very willing for you to go and embed it out everywhere. But as soon as as soon as they get big enough and they sort of cross over the threshold, they usually shut down. So it's actually against the terms of service for almost all of those platforms today to embed anything. So if you try to embed your LinkedIn profile somewhere, which you thought it's my profile, why not? LinkedIn actually in the terms of service, you're not even allowed to do it. You can try, and sometimes there will be small tools that allow you to do it. That's almost like a hack. When they catch you, they will shut it down. So it's actually a really tricky situation because the more popular they are, the less they want you to be the aggregate. They want to be the aggregate at the same time. So it's a really interesting dilemma.
Thank you for that very positive view of social media, Jeff. But no, but you're serious. I think it's what Amy brings up is I remember having a conversation 10 years ago with whoever comes up with the app that can actually aggregate all this and bring it together. But then, of course, you run into profitability and I would say laziness from the point of view of the companies that believe that they're going to just make more money if they control the access more directly. But anyway, thanks. Room number 3. I want to make sure everybody gets to talk here.
Hi, I'm going to do this camera off if that's okay. It's Jillian here. So we kind of picked up on a lot of threads from the main room. We talked a lot about learning through curation and just how that process really brings things together. We talked about how we should be intentional with our audience in mind when building portfolios. And how we can, how purpose should drive content, and the idea of kind of that Debbie brought up with these micro portfolios, and then linking them all together, talking about that aggregation and stuff like that. And Josh shared some really amazing student examples of ePortfolios that had very little personal presence, but they were still very deep in the way that they were curated. They just didn't have that reflective piece. So that was interesting. And just kind of like, how does that work if you're trying to do too much in one portfolio? It's better to kind of have these smaller pieces that are very purpose driven. And then we also got into the whole vulnerability and intrusion piece, which is, the private versus public personas and what you can allow. And, especially when to your students, you're kind of like that public figure, right? And so they're going to Google you, we have, rate my professor and things like that. And so do you control that presence, or do you minimize that presence, that private space? So I think I am, yes, a personal ePortfolio ecosystem. That's right. Okay. So I'm going to let anyone else from my group who might want to jump in. I think I covered most things. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jillian. I was about to speak and then you jumped in. I'm like, okay, let her talk.
You didn't seem like you wanted to, so I thought I'd let you.
No, I mean, I wasn't sure, but yeah, you did a great job. I just wanted to add a little bit about how, like we were talking about our professional online presence, but, also about how we advise students on like how they can build their ePortfolios, like as a capstone or something like that. But that's like their basically practice on how they're going to start building their professional presence in the future, and how the process of building the portfolio may be actually like the experience they need to build their identity versus express their identity, because they're at the stage where they're still learning about themselves, and they can learn about how much of their personal or professional they can put into it, and while doing so, realizing certain things about themselves, which is also important.
't you so much. That was wonderful. These guys, the groups are just incredible. And we're down to 5 minutes. I don't want to roll into the next session if we can avoid it, but we do have 2 groups left. Could group 4 give us a 2.5 minute summary? That was pretty close, this last one, so thank you.
I was the note taker for group 4, so I'll try and be very concise here. So we talked about ethics. So Gail brought up a really important point about when asking students to build a portfolio, that it should be on their terms, ensuring, that they are comfortable with whatever tool they're using, that they're not putting themselves out onto a public site or any of their own data out there that they're not comfortable with, and also providing a safe space for them for their learning to be vulnerable with whatever reflections or information they're posting on their portfolios. We also talked about a critical element of a portfolio being the audience. So being really clear about who's looking at that portfolio can really help inform what it is you're putting onto the portfolio. So you may have a portfolio that students are going to see that would be different when applying for a job, for example. Then also we talked a bit about when asking students to build a portfolio, having responsive and inclusive pedagogy. So knowing that students come from different contexts, may be comfortable sharing some things more than others, that they may bring, we were talking about, I know someone was sharing this, that students bring their own expertise and values that you may not know about. So giving the students the space to be authentic and bringing what they are comfortable sharing is going to make a brilliant portfolio. And then finally, the last thing I remember was you need community around a portfolio. So Gail, I have in quotes here, having a conversation around the portfolio is where the growth happens. And I think that summarizes most of the things I heard in the call.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ali. And room number 5.
Hi, I got volunteered by group 5 to talk, and I will be real concise. So we started off talking just about the sort of variety of experiences everyone had coming into this. It was a fun group because we had folks who had never done this, who had only done it for a little while, who are vets. So we got to talking about that a little bit, and it came to this idea of, I think this was actually Brandy said, an important thing is expectations and assessment, right? You want students to know what you expect of them, and you want them to know how you're going to assess them, right? Otherwise, you're just fumbling around in the dark. So that was a really, important and interesting point. Brandy talked about the AAC&U value rubrics, which are, I just posted a link to in the chat. But that got us thinking about, well, what are the expectations and the sort of assessment for professional portfolios for what we are doing, right? And how it is so wildly different depending on what sort of the goal is, right? So I use the example that I'm not on the job market, but when I was, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted outlined online out there about me. Nixon, I think, is said he was going up for reappointment and is going to make a portfolio for that, which will be different than the one he made when he was interviewing. So we talked a lot about the importance of having that sort of end goal of who do we want to read this and how do we want them to read this when thinking about our professional presence online. The end.
Thank you, Andy. That's wonderful. And we have 1 full minute here before we end the session. I want to thank everyone. The conversation, we will continue. Everything has been recorded. Everything is, the chat will also, I think, appear in the recording for any colleagues you want to refer this to. And we are going to continue the conversation on Slack, the AAEEBL Slack. So we will be able to share with each other any notions that so much has been brought up today that we could obviously spend a couple more days working through all of these. But guess what? Throughout the rest of this conference, you're going to get to see some amazing and very related presentations. So thank you for coming today, but please look through the rest of the schedule and find your preferred sessions. There's plenty of amazing discussion to come.
Great. Thanks so much, Jordi. So just to follow on to this session, Amy Cicino is running a session on faculty development of portfolios. So if you're already thinking, and I'm thinking Nixon, maybe this is good for you, that's at noon Pacific time today. Helen and I are offering a networking session for any of those of you who are newcomers to AAEEBL right after. You could just stay in this room, and then following that, I'll be hosting an informal talk for those of you who might be interested in doing research. And Helen has one last important announcement.
So just a quick note, on Wednesday morning, we'll be holding our second Shark Tank ePortfolio edition. It was a great event last year, and we're actively looking for people who might want to pitch. And when I say pitch, I mean an idea in any stage, whether it's just beginning, something you might have taken away from today, or something that's more developed. It could be an idea for an activity or idea for a program and so on. It's just basically one slide and a 3-minute pitch, and you'll get some amazing advice from our sharks. And so we are looking for people to join us. I'm going to go ahead and post. You can certainly DM me on Slack or email me with any questions. It's very low key. It's a lot of fun, and there will be prizes and many, many shark puns. So at least come for that, because we've been working on this all year. I would love to, share our humor with you, especially Kevin Kelly. So just feel free to contact me if you have any questions. JW is one of our pitchers last year, as well as Brandy Gilbert, who was one of the winners of the competition, and she will actually be one of our sharks this year.
Thanks, Helen. And thanks so much, Jordi, for such an engaging and awesome kickoff to our event. And thanks to all of you for all of your great thoughts and all the things you contributed to today's discussion.